one of my biggest missions is to redefine the value that a good coach provides their clients. Because, like you said, get to see them 3 to 5 times a week, even if it's once a week. It's 1 hour of intentful time, right? And what I see in the fitness industry is I see coaches more invested in learning how to create the right protocols to sell their services than bettering their services through knowledge and wisdom.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Allsmith. Today, I'm incredibly excited to dive deep into a very special conversation with someone that is making waves in the world of human healing. He's a world-renowned coach and movement specialist with a unique approach to optimizing physical, mental, and emotional health. His passion lies in not only improving how we move, but also in fostering a deeper connection to ourselves and the world around us. Today, I'm excited to unpack more of the story of Richard Aceves. Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be back. We have some new
Dude, our
discoveries.
last episode was gold.
It was a good one.
Totally, man. We've got high expectations because that last one, man, like I'm clearly biased towards the All Smith vision and mission, but it is kind of cringy sometimes when you listen to yourself. And that episode I've listened to 2 or 3 times now, and I'm like, damn, Richard, I'm like sitting there taking notes and notes and notes. Like I even texted our producer Mitch today with like all the notes. He's like, what are you doing? I was like, a brain dump. Like I'm just gathering information from this genius that we're going to get to speak to today.
Thank you. I try. I try to make things as digestible as possible, but sometimes it takes some time to process in a humble way.
Totally, man. But that's one of the beauties about you, right? Like both of us like tend to speak in the clouds a little bit. But what's dope is like every time we've spoken, we've evolved. We've upgraded the operating system a little bit. We've gotten a little bit more clear, less wordy, and more specific with the vision, the mission, the ethos based on experience, case studies. And it's not just what we read in a book. It's also taking the practical experience, getting the reps and sets in the lab, and then sharing that with the world as best we can. And I think it's a process that takes time, but that's one of the things I love about you is every time we speak, it gets more clear. The fogginess goes away. Man, since we last spoke, your family's grown a little bit.
Yeah, so we have the two kiddos, and it's chaotic. It's a fun life. We have the two kids, and we've had some stuff going on at home with it. Well, in Mexico with the family. So we're making our way back to California, and
Mhm.
it's always an interesting process as you're a father and you want to keep your kids safe, but then there's also that internal part that wants to let them make their own mistakes and kind of play rough, but then you can see that they're going to get hurt. So there's this interesting give and take and this fight back and forth of my youngest son is just like me, and you get upset, and then you're like, dude, that was me. Like this is me 2.0. You're like, how am I supposed to handle this? Because that's what I would have done. So it's always it's an
Totally.
interesting route. Being a father, you get to learn a whole lot about yourself. That's for sure.
That's so cool, man. What's been your personal transition there? You know, you started single income, no kids in the pursuit of this fitness journey. You meet your beautiful wife. You guys build this Disney-like love. Now the family's starting to grow. You're trying to grow your business. You're formulating these ideations, these retreats. You're traveling a lot with movement, ayahuasca, and Swami, and lots of things that we're going to unpack in today's episode. But what's it been like for you to play a pivotal role in the formulative years of their lives, but also at the onset of the growth and development of your business structure and you also spreading your wings a little bit?
Yeah, it's hard. So there's I'm sure all entrepreneurs go, I just wish somebody would just give me a paycheck every 2 weeks and I wouldn't have to stress so much. Um, so there's been a lot of battles of trying to have the balance between family time, work time, wife time, like the relationship, and then your relationship with yourself and your work relationship, and trying to stay healthy, and the identity, of trying to lead by example and going to the gym every day. But when you have the kids at home and they're sick and the wife is sick and you still have deadlines to do for work, um, it gets chaotic. So I created this new mantra, and it came from my oldest son. It started off as a joke, and he would always say, I would always tell him, "Who's fuerte?" in Spanish. That's strong, and he'd go, "Papi fuerte," which is daddy strong. And so that was like my new mantra, and I kind of made like this
Mhm.
joke, and I created like this whole template about it. But essentially, is I'm strong to be a strong example. I'm strong for myself to be able to handle the stresses that come in life, and to take action on what I need to take action on, and progress the family forward. And at the end of the day, I'm here to be a, a mentor for them, and to be a guiding light for them as well. So it's important for me to not define the clear balance between what work requires of me and the balance that I need to have to be the best dad possible. Um, but it's we've as they start to get older, now we're having communication. They understand, like, dad's, like I say, daddy's gonna go get papi's gonna go get fuerte, and they go, okay, papi, go get fuerte. Now, like, my oldest one's learning to do push-ups with me, and if I have to go work, now my youngest one loves he wakes up early in the morning with me, so he goes, papi papi and Kako go work. And I'm like, okay, buddy. And so he'll come and he'll sit next to the computer and we'll start working. And he has like a little learning fake laptop, and he'll start working with me. So, you get to instill the discipline and the intensity that comes along with having this sort of, this new generation life, right? I think in the past generations, like with my dad, probably with your dad, it was like, hey, they go to work and they leave at 8 in the morning and they come back at 6 o'clock at night, and you don't see them the whole day. And now we have the privilege and the freedom that we can work at home, we can choose our own schedules. So I'd much rather start to work at 8 o'clock at night to 10 o'clock, and then wake up at 4 and work to 6 or 7, and then spend more time with them. And so that's really the evolution, is you get to understand the lack of that you should have more sleep, but when you have kids, I prioritize spending time with the kids than getting sleep in. I think that's probably the biggest takeaway.
Yeah, man, I think what's beautiful about that is just we talked about it a little bit last time, and we've spent a lot of time together sweating with sleds and farmer carries and sandbags and doing a lot of strongman things together. Also, bicep openers and corrective exercise, and just talking through movement ideology and philosophy. But what's beautiful about what you're doing is, I think back in the day when we first met, it was all about performance. How
Right.
do we get stronger? How do we maximize hypertrophy? How do we move the most weight? How do we get the fastest time? And I think at that time, I won't speak for you, but I'll speak for me. It was like I had tremendous left TFL pain, that tensor fasciolata on my left hip. I would train 4 to 6 hours a day. And then like I didn't have the bandwidth, the capacity, or the energy to do anything else in life.
Right.
It's like at that point, it's like I'm married to the couch or the bed, like watching football. Maybe I wrote a blog post once a week. I was writing a lot of program design, but physically, in my opinion, in retrospect, I was the shell of a man
Right.
because I wasn't able to express my fitness in life. And once you become a father, you and I both know those kids don't care how tired you are. They want daddy. They want
You're the
papi
toy.
fuerte. They want the man that's going to play with them, that's going to talk through things with them, that's going to explore different ideations with them. And I think the difficulty is just I say it time and time again, and maybe it's getting a little repetitive for our listeners, but it's just this concept of like, do you have fitness or does fitness have you?
Right.
And I think that's a really important thing to just keep nailing home for our listeners, because fitness is meant to be a foundational structure that's going to help you build a beautiful life.
Right.
And if fitness is everything and you're too tired to go be dad or go be a business owner or go do cool things and explore, dream, discover in the world, your priorities might be a little bit off. Will you speak on that a little bit, especially since becoming a father?
Yeah, I think it's part. So in my theory, there's these four battling identities. So you have your inner child, your id, your primal self, your ego that's trying to balance what goes out to the world and what primal emotions get expressed, or what needs to be sorted for the superego, which is how you want society or how you think society views you. And so we're battling between these four identities constantly. And I think that for the value of fitness, when people use it as more and more volume in order to gain some measurable objective, they're using it as a way to falsify confidence in the world. So it's interesting for you to say that it was your left QL, right? So the left
Hmm.
oblique in emotional mapping, how I've mapped the body, is confidence towards the self. And so you could have lots of confidence towards the outside world and how you're
Mm,
performing for the ego and the superego, but internally you're lacking the confidence. The lack of confidence forced you to do more and more volume, because volume will provide you with safety
yeah.
in completing the skills or the tasks. Intensity provides you with the confidence. And so, what did you notice as you started to add more volume and more training? And yes, you had to do rigorous training for the objective of getting to the games, but it was interesting to see that you would add more volume not because you needed it, but because you were trying to falsify your confidence in the space that you were in for yourself on an internal level. And so this fight that starts to happen when people start to use more and more fitness, right, or more and more gym time, like going 2 a days, 3 a days, spending 3 to 4 hours at the gym, it's because there's they're still running away from their internal inner child and primal self. And they use a gym as a way to escape it
Oh, yeah.
and falsify the
Hmm.
expression or the confidence of it. And so it's an interesting thing that you see people get wrapped up in, right? So I work a lot with these clients that are, they started again just going to the gym, and now they're wanting to become fitness trainers and coaches, but it's not because they necessarily have a passion for it. It's still their quitting mechanism, their running away mechanism to try and not face what they needed to face in the first place. And so this is where I say proper movement is medicine. You need the proper alignment of breath contraction, of breath, muscle contraction, and heart rate in order to oscillate correctly, in order for you to have a full expression and gain perspective. And that will start to give you the perspective of the value, which is what is your end vision with all this training. The means goals for you were the CrossFit games. At that time, that was like the end vision. I get to the CrossFit games and nothing else matters. But as you start to get older, you start to realize, hey, that is really just part, like a small sliver in the rest of my life of wanting to be healthy. And so it's like a drug, right? You get addicted to that dopamine, to the attention, to the serotonin, everything that's happening in training. And so you feed it more and more and more and more until you're absolutely broken. And then when you're broken, people are like, oh, well, you wanted to, compete at high levels. Like that's what it takes. And I think that that's just, it's a misalignment of what the inner child, the primal self want to express versus the identity that's been caught in the society or the community of that superego, which at the time was the CrossFit games, could be surfing, triathlons, whatever it may be. You start to have this split identity where one of it's like, I don't really want to do this anymore. But the other one goes, but then what are we going to do? Like, that's scary out there. Here I have a tribe. I'm breaking
Mm,
myself, but I belong here. And so that's what so we talked about a little bit about this last time, but it's like you need to find that community that you align with. And you need to make sure that those values align all the way through. Otherwise, you're going to be doing things that go against your true values or your true principles. And that's where you start to have that split in identity, that split in value, where you're going to be adding more volume to falsify the safety that you belong there.
no, no, the way you said it was perfect. It absolutely makes a lot of sense. And I think the other thing that's important to sit with is that there's actually an adaptation phase because identities change,
Right.
right? There's the element of like, this was my identity before that had a high value system to me, and I aligned with that community for a set amount of years. But then life changes, so just like it changed for you in the essence of your value system has changed now that you have two little boys.
Right.
That wasn't the same in the beginning when it was you trying to build something, and now your capacity needs to be bigger because there's service orientation and love and connection and a job that needs to be done and a responsibility that needs to be held when you go home. And that's something I think that's difficult sometimes to tangibly conceptualize to the mind, which is, oh, well, I did it that way for so long. Why change now? And that's what I think you're doing such a great job of, being so interoceptive, of like observing body language. And let's just use a high level athlete as an example. In the beginning, you're excited, you're passionate, you have this maybe false bravado, but like your posture's there, your breathing pattern's probably a little bit relaxed. You're anticipating fun and joy, and you're pursuing this flow state. Well, over the course of time, now it's almost like, man, I've done this thing for so long. I've checked that box. Left knee's a little bit tight. I'm not sure if I'm going to get that contract extension or if that sponsor's going to pick me up again. Now there's more bleed into the headspace.
Right.
So it's almost like the concept seemingly changes. And that's what I think you do a great job of observing, is like, oh, that same person has different posture, different breathing pattern, cheekbones look different, eyebrows look different. Like, you're watching all the facial features. And then, Richard, something that you said, I have to read this from your page. It was so beautiful. And maybe this creates a little bit of imagery for people. Your heart doesn't just pump. It has a magnetic field that extends up to several feet beyond your body. It holds and broadcasts your emotions, with each beat reflecting the rhythm of your emotional state. Research shows that these rhythms subtly influence the energy around you, affecting everyone and everything you encounter. And that just, like, man, that stood out to me so much when I kind of went through your page and kind of did a gentle recap based on when we connected last time versus now, because it's like, where does Bryce end and Richard begin? If we were in person, we could feel our frequency. And that's subtly hard to depict with science or the human language, but it's felt. For sure felt. Will you dive into that a little bit, as far as just like this rhythm that seemingly changes across anxiety patterns as athletes develop and injuries step in and life changes, but also just what you feel as a coach coming from this heart's rhythm and frequency?
Yeah. Okay, where do we start? So something that very deeply drove me to the path that I'm on right now with coaching and how I coach people is I was watching the Avicii documentary, where he was starting to have panic attacks, and he was trying to do a training session with a personal trainer, and his heart rate started to elevate, and he started to have a minor panic attack. And the personal trainer said, "Oh, your heart doesn't understand the difference between working out and being on stage. That's weird," and just walks away.
Mm.
And I was like, that means that you didn't have an answer, so you're dismissing it. But this was somebody that had such high amount of anxiety and stress built up in the body that was never expressed, that led him to, essentially anxious depression, then to a full collapse and retarded depression, then back up to full anxiety mode, that the only way that he could gain control was suicide. Right? Think how powerful a different cue, or a coach, a personal trainer, that could have been like, "Hey, your heart doesn't understand excitation based on what it's observing. So whether it's the gym or the stage, it's going to treat it as stress. We just need to understand why that stress is there and how to express it." Now, doesn't that seem like a better way to approach the situation? Right? So the heart
Mm-hmm.
is part of a system. The human is an ecosystem. And within that system, we're essentially dealing, it's called the free energy principle: observation, prediction, experience. We're not reactive human beings, we're predictive human beings. And the predictions happen based on the observations made. Those observations being part of the heart. So the heart has its enteric system, and it has its own little brain that it can, based on the heart rate, will actually start to dictate how your breath whether elevates or mouth breathing or holding of the breath, right? So it's a feedback loop. Or you can use the breathing to try and manipulate the breath, the heart rate. And so the heart rate at itself is essentially your true sense of self, your interoceptive self. And an interesting thing is if you have clients that are highly anxious, or if you have like my youngest kid has like a lot of energy and anxiety and he gets overwhelmed quickly. And so I'm one of the only ones that could put him to sleep. And what I do is I apply pressure here and I literally just start to slow down my breathing. And that slows down my heart rate. And my heart rate through my hand actually connects and goes to his heart and actually starts to calm him down and puts him to sleep in under 5 minutes. So you can do that with a human being. It's actually been proven that if you're with a human that is highly anxious or very depressed, meaning like there's a very low vagal tone and very low heart rate, resting heart rate, if you were to grab his hand and hold on for 2 minutes, the stronger heartbeat will, the weaker heartbeat will adapt to the stronger heartbeat. So
Mm.
the heart rate is a great way to be able to understand where somebody is, what current state they're in, based on the system that is observing the environment. And so when I'm working with clients, whenever we do any sort of training, I'm like, hey, where's your heart rate? And they're like, well, I don't know. I'm like, can you feel your heart? No. So that tells you right away, like how disconnected they've gotten. They can't, they don't know how to find their heart rate. So I use physical movement, high intensity, to bring that heart rate up so they can start to feel it. But if you can start to listen to your heart rate, the system itself is telling you in which state you're in, and it's emotional variance as well. So it's allowing you to see, how excited you are, or how depressed or saddened you are.
Free is the way to be. Life beats us up a bit and causes some bumps and bruises, but that doesn't mean we have to stay on the sidelines. This is why we've partnered with Kinyan Labs. Get back to doing what you love with this incredible portable device designed to get you back in the game. Kinyan is on a mission to move people from pain to possible with their top-rated red light therapy and laser solution, which tackles inflammation along with muscle and joint pain quickly and effectively. What I love is that it's portable and rechargeable, making it easy to actually incorporate into my everyday life consistently. It's small and lightweight, so you can throw it in your gym bag or work bag, or even an overnighter. Kinyan's lasers and LED combo make this cutting-edge device extremely versatile for use with general aches and pains, as well as chronic back pain, arthritis, post-surgery recovery, endometriosis, and more. This has been an amazing tool keeping my elbows and knees pain-free for pressing, pulling, and squatting in the gym. Great tools like the Move Plus give me the freedom and flexibility to continue living life on my terms without limitations. There are a lot of reasons why over 15,000 people are using this device and rating it 4.7 stars and above. Head on over to kinyan.io and use code ALLSMITH at checkout to begin your pain-free journey. Something that I really love here that I talk about is using movement as a tool to enhance the quality of people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm hearing from you that I absolutely love is using movement as a tool to create awareness of heart rate, which then help you better understand state to then depict or decide on the next action step. At the very least, all you're doing is you're getting people to worry less about the stress that's causing the anxiety, and more so like lean inward towards the physiological effects of like, what am I feeling? Why is my heart rate here? What's going on? And I love that you use movement as a tool in that way. And I also want to say one more thing that's pulling at my headspace right now, which is I think sometimes the world puts down the concept of a coach, a personal trainer, a healer, a guide, a shaman. Maybe those titles are not perceived in the same way as doctor or politician or firefighter or these big jobs that get so much respect in the world. But something that's really important about the healers and the trainers and the coaches of the world is that We see our patients almost every day, Richard.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't see them, we talk to them, which means what? We have access to feel their energy, to see their body language, to gather data, to feel a part of their lives and connect with them where they're giving us information, whether it's phone call, text, email, consistently over the course of time. That's really fucking important
It's
because
insane.
there's often times where a doctor or a physical therapist often sees these patients, physical therapist maybe once a week, right? Because it's a health insurance model. You get
Right.
like eight sessions maybe. You know, your primary care physician might see a patient 1 to 3 times a year, if at all, and that's usually 7 to 10 minutes. It's very difficult to get to know people in such a short amount of time in a system that's designed for profit in that way. And the reason why I'm steering the conversation this way is because last time on our chat, we talked a lot about just noticing, like you just described with the heart rate. No doctor is going to do that. They're not going to ask, hey, what are you eating? What's your heart rate? They're going to say, what's the problem and how do I fix it in a really short amount of time and throw pharmaceuticals at it to fix it real quickly.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to note these things, to be gently disruptive in the healthcare system, to realize that like our headspace as human beings, the first thing financially that goes is contribution to healers, coaches, shamans, trainers, yada, yada, because it's a cash model.
Yeah.
But that's actually the wrong thing to do. Those are the people that you spend the most time with. And Alex Hormozy and Chris Williamson talked about this, which is if you want to predict the success of somebody, just look at their calendar. Look where they spend the majority of their time. With my clients, I see them at least 5 hours a week. 5 hours a week in comparison to 7 minutes a year. Do the math on that for those of you listening.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. I mean, I think that there is a big shift happening within the health industry in the U.S. And obviously it's not everybody has the capacity to afford a personal trainer 5 times a week, but there are so many outlets out there that do provide a lot of a wealth of knowledge for you to start to invest in yourself. Um, I think that the
Mm-hmm.
passion, there's this double-edged sword with personal trainers or coaches. I don't even know what the field is anymore, right? I feel like I'm in such a skewed field of, what am I, a personal trainer, a coach specialist, a movement specialist, whatever it may be. But there's this the one of my biggest missions is to redefine the value that a good coach provides their clients, because like you said, you get to see them 3 to 5 times a week, even if it's once a week. It's 1 hour of intentful time, right? And what I see in the fitness industry is I see coaches more invested in learning how to create the right protocols to sell their services than bettering their services through knowledge and wisdom. And this is where I want to make a
Mm-hmm.
change, because I'm like, it's great that you memorized all this stuff, but what happens when it doesn't work? What happens when you have that client like
Yes.
Avicii and he goes, I'm getting a panic attack, and you don't have a solution for him? You need to be ready to respond. And this is again kind of what's led me to look outside of just the normal spectrum of what is a personal trainer, and looking at the sets and the reps and the type of programs and cycles that you have to be doing, because I want to be able to help the human in front of me. And I've been fortunate enough in my life where I've had the clients that have challenged me, that if I wanted to be normal, I would have just stuck to the program and given them deadlifts and broad jumps and sled work and sandbags, whatever. But because they challenged me in a way that I was like, well, let's look into this. Let's go deeper into it. And more importantly, I listened to my intuition. I was like, okay, so if you're feeling sad, what do you need to get out of sadness? Because we all know that saying stop being sad or writing affirmations on the wall don't fucking help in the long term.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's I think that as a whole in the fitness industry, you have to be able to push your own levels further, and that requires gaining knowledge and experience and not just regurgitating information. So don't just build up your wall with certifications where you just took notes and then forgot about it and disregarded all of the information. Go spend time working with clients and really start to understand these deep concepts that people are talking about, but how do you apply it to the human in front of you? Otherwise, what's the point?
No, I think what you're saying is absolutely important, and I'll say it this way: just be fucking interested. Like actually care about the human that walks in the door and listen to what's going on in their life.
Yeah.
Make them have a safe space, like you always talk about. You have to create the safe environment first. When you do that with your vagal tone, with your heart rate, showing that you care, giving eye contact, observing their body language, you're taking in all of this feedback that they're subconsciously delivering. And then you're asking appropriate questions to get on the same wavelength as them and meet them where they're at. You can have the X's and O's of a beautiful program, but if it's on a day that they've been stuck in traffic, got to fight with their significant other, they're having some financial stress, they woke up with a crank in their neck, and they hadn't eaten much that day. Okay, your sexy squat program probably isn't the best in that moment. And you won't know that unless you ask better questions and observe.
Right.
And you understand how to GAS, like we talked about last time, give a shit. And when you do that consistently over the course of time, you create love, you create trust, and you create buy-in. And then you can execute the X's and O's of the program because they believe in you, and you're creating this framework rather than a rule book that they have to follow the X's and O's, as opposed to, hey, here's a generalized framework. Let's play within these parameters, with this being the goal based on where you're at today. And then you give me feedback as we go. And that's the beauty of a whiteboard, is we can change things and be adaptable on the fly to steer the ship in the right direction. And like you said on a few different podcasts, and I loved the way you said this, we as coaches or leaders are not the captain of the ship. We're simply a guide.
Yeah.
We help steer it in the right direction when asked and when on occasion. But the master or the captain of the ship is the individual.
For sure. Yeah, it's a you're trying to create independence and not dependency. And this dependency and independence, right? It's I have clients that I've been working with for years, but that's because I'm still adding value to their day-to-day lives. But they're a lot more independent. Like with some clients, I used to, talk to them, let's say 10, 12, 15 hours a week, and now we talk every, maybe 4 or 5 hours. And so the time spent with them goes down because now they understand how to shift their program, what the guidelines are, if they start to feel down, like what that means for the regulation and what that means with their behavioral cycles. So it's about adapting with your clients and creating the independence that if they do have to leave you for whatever reason, they can still be better off. You know what I mean? And I think we're still in this sort of cycle of, can we sell this 6 week booty camp, and then when 90% of these clients fail, can we get another new group to come in? And I'd rather be like, no, can we just keep nurturing these people to keep growing and getting better? And that requires more of a in-depth understanding of the human and how the human learns and behaves. And I think that's where the fitness industry is going to end up going, because with AI now, I mean, it's anybody out there that needs help, you can basically go on ChatGPT and give it a few different things, and it'll tell you a whole program to go do. So all these people that were just in it to sell these programs are going to end up going somewhere else. I've been now in the fitness industry almost 18 years, and there's so many people that I've met and gone through, and they're already out because they're just burnt out. But that's because they never wanted, like I told you in the beginning, they never wanted to actually be a coach. They just wanted to be in the gym working out, and they realized that this isn't the profession for them. They don't actually enjoy helping people. I love helping people. Like, there's nothing better than when somebody says, hey dude, I have a shoulder problem or a hip, or whatever happens. Like, if I see some sort of pain, physical, mental, or emotional, like, let me know, and I'm there to help. Like, that's my passion, that's my driver.
You really are. And you do that in person, and you also do it remotely. And I've been very public about this, but July 23rd, 5:42 p.m., my mom passed away from stage 4 colon cancer. You were one of the first people to text me. And you were like, hey, man, I'm thinking about you. I know you're going through a lot right now. You know, if you need help with a fitness program, if you need somebody to talk to, like, I understand grief pretty well. And let's explore this concept a little bit. And I'm forever grateful
Yeah.
for that.
Sorry for your loss,
You
man. You
never
make me
know
emotional
just the love and
every time I
support that
come here.
comes through.
Yeah, man. No, absolutely.
It's part of where we go,
Yeah.
man. It's part of our human connection. But I very much appreciated that. And that's where I wanna explore next with you, Richard, is this concept of grief. It is such a misunderstood word. I feel bad for people that haven't gone through it, that have close friends or family, and they say thoughts and prayers, or they're like, hey, let me know if you need anything. And it's all coming from a good place. And this is going to be me speaking on a little bit of a high horse, slight tangent, just kind of being a dick for a second. But like, that stuff doesn't help.
Yeah.
What helps is I'm holding space for you. If you want to give me a call, or if you need a hug, or if you want to go on a hike and talk about your mom or whoever you lost or what your grief is, I think that's beautiful. And maybe it's case dependent on the individual, and it probably is, but for me it's like I actually crave that quality time where I can story tell about the person that's gone, because it makes it feel like she's still here. And then also it allows me to pay it forward to be like, man, she gave me all these cool lessons and I want to take those lessons and share them with somebody else. And that's this legacy, like domino effect of wisdom and love and support that allows that human to live on. And the reason why I'm saying it like this is because I want to give a tangible understanding for people that they can feel and they can see that, like, nobody really understands grief. They don't know what to say. And like, since you and I observe body language all the time, it's like, oh, hey, haven't seen you for a while. Sorry for your loss. And it's like awkward, as opposed to just like not saying anything. And it's like, they just come up and they go, hey, I haven't seen you in a while, and just give you a hug. And not like one of those little halvesy hugs, but like a real hug, shoulders back and down. You're holding them. You're putting the hands in the back and like holding them to their, it's like, hey, I'm here. I'm showing you that I'm here. There's something about that that I think works really well, and I try to pay that forward a little bit. But I want to explore grief with you and maybe give people 3 to 5 tools by the end of our conversation that they can use not only for themselves, but maybe to pay forward to others when they've got people in their circle that go through hard things.
Yeah. Let's see. It's a very difficult thing to lose somebody that you're close to. And again, I'm not a specialist by any means, but with the people that I've worked with that have lost somebody very close to them, um, the biggest thing that I see is the lack of expression of anger. And shit hurts. It's extremely difficult. And I think that it's again that superego and feeling selfish and almost guilty of wanting to express the primal rage and anger that that person is now gone, that gets stuck, and as much as you want to let it out, it's almost blocked. And so for me, I think it has to come to being able to understand where you are and what it is that you need. Everybody has different timelines, and obviously each case is dependent on a lot of small events that have happened up to the death, right? So whether it's a sudden death, whether it's been happening for a long time, and you kind of have been able to create a little bit more acceptance that that person's no longer going to be there. Um, how you were brought up. Like I had a lot of early deaths with my grandparents, so I got to be around people passing away at an early age. Um, and so I think that a lot of this is at the bare minimum. I'm not trying to take the human emotion or consciousness out of it. It is an extremely intense event. And that intensity that comes into that body, that energy that comes into the body, if it's not expressed outward again, it's going to create these cycles. And so trying to create a false sense of acceptance does not help. And going into sadness is absolutely acceptable, but there needs to be a way to come out of it. And if you cannot come out of it and at some point express that equal amount of intensity from when you had that loss, you will not be able to fully overcome it from the physical, mental, and emotional standpoint. You can justify it
Mm,
mentally and emotionally because we need to rationalize that, yes, your mother is no longer here. We understand that, and we can have our emotions. But if you don't let that primal physical intensity of how you felt that moment that she passed away, it's going to be very difficult for you to overcome this cycle. And so, what you're going to start to
mm-hmm,
notice is next year, as this year starts to come about, you're going to start to dip back down or down regulate to the same amount of depression, sadness, wherever you were that you needed to disconnect from yourself completely and put yourself towards something else. You'll find something else to latch onto, and it's going to be those same exact behavioral cycles. So the hurt that's inside of you is not gone unless it's physically expressed, because that information is again stored within parts of the body, so that when these sort of yearly, quarterly, decade type cycles happen, the body knows how to behave and how to predict the experience, because the body doesn't want to
mm,
get stuck with another death coming up and you not knowing how to behave again. So it's already creating these predictions and it's observing. And so you're finding these cycles.
yeah, for sure. What I'm hearing here is you can't think your way out of feeling.
Right.
You have to go through the stages of grief. They're not linear. I mean, anger comes and goes, sadness comes and goes. You're triggered by certain smells, thoughts, emotions, songs, all the things.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing that's great about it is when I say creating a safe space for somebody to just be in that moment, the curiosity, right? And I'm not speaking as me right now. I'm speaking as if I'm somebody that's observing or with somebody that's going through grief. I think having curiosity of asking, hey, what do you feel? Where in your body do you feel it? What are some special memories in relation to said person that passed away that, make you really feel connected to him or her? Would you ever write a short story about it? Would you ever have that story be something maybe that you tell your kids or your friends or your family? And do you have the space and the capacity to navigate this conversation right now? Or should we save it for another time where you have a little bit more bandwidth? The timing matters. And I think being able to have that level of curiosity and explore rather than like, hey, I'm going to fix this. Let's just go drink right now, or let's just go hit a workout, or let's just be dismissive of that. Because being sad doesn't help anybody. It just like lowers the vibration of the room. Just like push that to the side.
Just
Let's
bury
just
it
keep
deep down,
pushing
bro.
forward because self-reliance is everything. Right, that happens time and time again, and it's just like that works until it doesn't work anymore. And then when you get an elevated state of consciousness, you've been through enough and observed other people go through certain things, you're like, there's got to be a better way. Let me challenge the traditional societal norms, and let's think to ourselves, let's create a process, let's create a rhythm. And I just think when you look at like what dogs do, and I talk about this time and time again, man, they just sit with you. They look at you, and like when you're feeling something, they nuzzle against you for a second. They kind of understand. They don't totally understand, but they're just there.
Yeah.
And I just wish humans could understand that a little bit. Like it's not about fixing. It's just be there.
Right.
And then you can kind of play and explore together. And you can hear the softness in my voice that's been such a great element of my healing journey is dogs, equestrian therapy. We talked about the heart's vibration. Horses mimic the heart of the person that's around them. I've seen that time and time again be very healing for people as well. But let's dive in a little bit, Richard. Like, what are maybe 5 tools that people can use to help navigate grief?
I think the first one would be meditative walks. So, talking about the heart, going for nasal breathing walks when you're feeling down low, right? So when you're on the sadness side of things, going for a walk, listening to binaural beats, or I like to put on like Brain Food. It's called the playlist on Spotify. Nasal breathing only. Go walking.
It's called brain food.
Brain Food, yeah. Um,
Okay. And what's the hertz there? If somebody wanted to search the hertz
if
on
they're doing
Spotify or Apple Music.
if they're doing binaural beats, I believe it's 42 hertz. I usually just put on
Okay.
binaural beats focus, and it does a wide range. The whole point is that the binaural beats are going to create safety in the hearing, so it allows for the safe space to build up.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter if you're doing more deep sleep or delta or alpha waves. It's just more about creating safety in the sound, so there's nothing that can startle you. Um,
Mm.
and and from there, you're going to nasal breathe, and you're going to get your heart rate to about 125 to 130, and you're going to keep it there. Now, obviously, if you're in really good shape, it might require you to go a little bit to go jogging, but don't worry so much. Like, we just want to walk fast enough that we're elevating the heart rate. Or you can even go on a treadmill. I go on a treadmill and just go uphill. Um, if you guys have hills in California, so you can just go walk, go walk the trails. But what that's going to do is it's going to
Mm-hmm.
start to bring the heart rate up to 125. And this is going to start to oscillate with the nasal breathing. So it's going to raise the vagal tone. It's going to open up the blood vessels. And it's going to allow you to create a greater sense of self. So this heart rate, this is something I've been playing with. I haven't spoken on it, so it's a first that I'm saying on the podcast. I said it earlier. So we want
Mm.
oscillation of the heart rate, oscillation of the muscle contractions, and oscillation of the breath, and they all need to align. So if you can align the breath, and if you walk for about an hour, you know, 20, 30 minutes is great, but if you can do it for about an hour, you're going to notice that you get into this sort of active meditation. And what that's going to do is you start contracting the psoas major as you're walking because you're hinging, right? You're going to start to find your swagger. So you'll start to use your transverse abdominis, the sense of self. And so you're going to get the hamstrings, the safety towards the fatherly and feminine side. And so all of this is going to contract as you're breathing, as the heart rate is going at 125. So it actually allows you to open up the heart chakra and create a little bit of alleviation and gain perspective of what's happening, and either shed some empathy, which will come out as tears, or allow some joy to come up, some good memories. But it's essentially allowing you time to evaluate where you are in time and space and see what needs to work. Now, sometimes for these walks when I've had clients, it's like, okay, so what are your anchors? What are your drivers? Let's talk about best memories that you've had, or let's talk about times that you were angry at these scenarios, X, Y, and Z. So you can always have like different things. Let your mind wander, but don't let it be all about the narrative brain saying stories. Let your mind also have an intake of what's going on around you and creating safety in that environment. So the connection of the heart rate, the muscle contractions, and the breath are going to allow the sense of self to go up, the vagal tone to go up, and so it's going to essentially excite you to get you out of that sadness. And then it's what do you want to do with it, right? So this will help you change the state a little bit, create a little bit more acceptance. Um, the second one I would say, and that's the one I told you, I was like, people need to express the anger and the rage, and it's not don't do it right now because you need to fix it. But when you start to feel that buildup, just have a safe space to do it, so you're not breaking windows or glasses or going to a full meltdown, right? Because it happens. And so the key here is to be able to understand that we can use the gym as a safe place to express ourselves and to let go. People don't need to know why you're grunting. This is about your experience. So for me, doing some swami to kind of, again, connect with everything, get the breathing in place and everything. And then afterwards, I do what's called a Dimmel deadlift, or a reactive Dimmel deadlift, to get the hamstrings and the glutes to start to fire. And I do this with a D ball or a sandbag. And then I do what I call like a row slam. So essentially, I'll go from doing Dimmel deadlifts, getting the hamstrings and the glutes to fire. And then I'll do a row where I pull the sandbag into my chest and I slam it into the ground. And I'll do that repeatedly for 3 to 5 reps with grunts. And then I'll walk around a little bit and then I'll go back. I'll start doing the reactive dimmels and then back to the slams. And then I'll build back up, reactive dimmel deadlifts, and then back to the slams. And so what you're doing there is we're building the heart rate up to 165. This is where the true connection to the hamstrings are, which means you have maximum safety of the father or the masculine and the feminine or the motherly figure. Doing the rows and the pushes are going to allow you to build the confidence of the self and the confidence of the ego to express. And then as we start to do the dimmels, they start to go into the glutes, which is the primal self. So now we're able to use our body to truly express how we primarily, like our id, our primal self feels. The anger that doesn't need to be justified for anybody by anybody. It's anger that's inside of you because it's not you're trying to justify it or put an experience or a memory to it. It's just energy that came in. So we need to express it out. So if you're somebody that's lost somebody recently and you're noticing that you're having discomfort on the right side or the left side, that's because you're having a hard time expressing the anger that they're gone. And you're trying to justify it in all kinds of
Mm.
ways. So this allows the blood flow and the expression to happen. So as you start to go, you start to you start to grunt. Depending on how deep you get into it, I've had people that have like these sort of DMT trips. That's why I call it movement ayahuasca, right? But because they literally start to have experiences, not just having a memory, but like the experience of the flavor, the taste, the feeling in the hands, the feet, like they're reliving a past event. And so this is a great way to just let
Mm.
go of a lot of energy that's been stored for a long time or that high amount of intensity because
Hmm.
you lost somebody.
Wow, that was probably the best description that I've heard just about how to navigate the anger component, and I think it relates to something you're quite the expert on, which is emotions and muscles. And I think people misunderstand that sometimes. They think there's the mental, the brain, the physical, the body, and then the emotional, more psychology type principles and feeling and all those things, but it's all interconnected. How did you kind of begin your personal experience in relation to your philosophy on human movement in relation to the emotions in muscles, and how did you start to better conceptually understand how to shift states based on anger or sadness or depression or anxiety?
Yeah. So, I'll preface with the map that I've developed with the emotions in the muscles or the behavioral patterns in the muscles has been on my own because people are always like, what book can I read to start to learn about it? Um, so this pattern has been me working with a lot of people, and that's what I mean about gaining the wisdom. Um, I started to see the pattern with left shoulder and self-love and right low back and need for anger and expression of anger and the id. And I started to map it out. This again interconnected. So you think of the brain as the predictive machine, right? It's creating the predictions so that you can have the experience that you predicted. The body, the
Mm.
systems are there to observe. So we observe through eyesight, through smell, through hearing, through magnetic waves that we connect with unconsciously, through pressure and sensation. And so all of this information, we always think this is in the brain, but it's actually in the body. And I started to create, as I started to find why is it that people that were depressed always had right low back pain and lack neural output of the sternocostal head of the pec on the left side? And why was it that all military people or athletes always had issues with right trap, first rib, and right upper pec? And so I started to kind of have like these patterns where it was like, okay, that's super interesting. Like the behavioral traits directly correlated to the physical discomfort. And so
Mm.
they're feedback loops. It's not that this happened to you and so therefore this emotion turns on or off. It can, right? It's your perception of what happened in that event. But it's you started to play a sport. That sport specific movement pattern starts to change how you behave or how you perceive the world. So you are who you hang around with in that society. And so as we talked a little bit about CrossFit, you become this identity because your behavior starts to change where you can't see anything outside of that perception. And so the body is holding on to behavioral traits because it can communicate much more quickly on how to behave than if the brain had to process everything. And so there's a hierarchy to the nervous system. There's 8 steps of it. The first 4 steps are automatic, and then after that, they start to go towards you needing to make a change. I'd haven't memorized them, but there's more stuff. It's essentially how you get through the medulla oblongata to get like present moment to create that moment of presence and change the perspective that you have. But essentially, what I started to see is the body is giving you signals about how you see the external world and your internal world. And the way it does that is we have
Mm.
the Golgi tendon organ that essentially says if there's an overload of force, the muscle fiber is going to tear. But I also started to realize that it's emotional behavior or emotional factors that will make the Golgi tendon organ turn off. And that's going to send signals to
Mm.
more afferent muscles, which are higher in intensity. That's going to send, essentially the muscles can't talk like inside out, right? Like they can't talk to your brain and be like, hey, Joy, we're turning off down here. So how can they communicate? They communicate with intensity. So
Mm.
whenever anybody complains about discomfort and needs to go see a chiropractor, a physiotherapist, massage therapist, acupuncture, you name it, what are they working on? Very afferent muscles. It's always trigger points. It's always the muscles that are knotted are muscles you don't contract efferently, meaning I'm going to contract my pec, but you're not going to contract your pec minor. You don't contract your first rib. You don't contract your supraspinatus. You don't contract your serratus at will. They're reactive muscles. So they're reacting to the
Mm.
environment. So when you start to lose, let's say you start to lose confidence of yourself, what's the first thing that's going to go? The lat. So now I need to portray that I have confidence. So what do? I retract the shoulder and elevate so I can look like I still have confidence. That you're posturing.
Mm.
You're not actually carrying that confidence with you, right? And then as it starts to turn off, the
Yeah,
confidence
it's like a falsified confidence, right?
exactly. And so then you start to see the same thing happening with, and then it'll eventually get to very tight points. So the transverse abdominis is the seed of safety, right? Seed of safety and confidence, if you think about it. Because if you have a strong transverse abdominis, you can reach, you can bend, you can twist around, and you'll be fine. And then from there, you go to the obliques. The external obliques are the confidence of the ego, right? Now you can actually carry yourself. And what happens there? It meets with the lat dorsi. They connect at the same insertion. The confidence of the superego. But if one starts to miss, then it
Mm.
starts to go further and further and further to where you had the tight QL, which was a lack of confidence towards self. And the QL is trying to tell the body, like, hey, we're not doing so hot down here, right? What's the point of the QL? The point of the QL is flexion extension laterally, which is also the function of the external oblique. But the external oblique is efferent. You're controlling it. The QL is afferently, reactively. And so I started to map the body out on, okay, so what do these bigger structural muscles say about how the body is observing the environment and is telling the brain to behave, how to behave. And then I started to see
Mm.
that pain points happen when you don't listen or you don't want to change how your inner child or your primal self wants to actually behave. And so then you start to get more and more afferent muscles that will
I
start to
think you
have
mapped it out really well.
that was oh
No, I think you mapped it out really well. You have this awesome drawing
that's only one.
that you have on your Instagram that I
Yeah,
really like, that I think, yeah, you've got a few more.
yeah,
This one's good though. Like, will you talk about that? Like maybe starting up at like the jawline or the mouth and like what some of those things mean. I got to zoom in here, but you talk about the right upper pec having to do with like father approval and the left upper pec having to do with motherly love. And
yeah,
like, it's just interesting to see the correlation because I definitely align with what you're saying. We briefly touched on it last time about the body keeping the score. But like this is something that you might have a little bit of knowledge or direction from a book, but then the difficulty becomes how do we create science backing this where it creates buy-in from Western medicine, right? Like how does it remove or graduate rather away from maybe woo-woo concept of oh wow, like my left hip was bothering me when I was going through that breakup and the breakup was over. I went through some healing techniques and all of a sudden my left hip pain is gone.
yeah,
And before I was doing so much acupuncture and hip flexor stretching and lateral flexion to open up the QL. And honestly, it was like you said, it's the people you spend time with and it's the environment that you're in. If a fish continually is trying to climb a tree, he's going to feel like he's stupid
Right.
always. And he's not really going to be in the environment that allows him to thrive. And so I want to kind of touch on this a little bit as to like, how do we make some of these observations that you're seeing across a wide variety of case studies in the lab, tinkering with real humans. You're understanding that tightness of certain muscle fibers have to do with the inner child or some sort of trauma that's been navigated. But then while overcoming that and healing, the pain goes away, it just unlocks. The Trident family taught me something really important this last year, that we are all a bundle of stories, both good, bad, and everything in between. All of their cold brews remind their customers that they are part of something bigger than themselves. I start my day with the Sweet Cream Cold Brew as I am prepping my mind and body for fitness, service, coaching, and podcasting. With various locations in San Diego, they offer over 14 nitro cold brews and a variety of specialty drinks. You can find the perfect brew and pair it with one of their treats from the Keto Bakery. You can check them out over at tridentcoffee.com and use code ALLSMITH to take your coffee experience to the next level.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? It's yeah, so I have Dr. Ed, who's a partner of mine, who's sort of helping me navigate through the medical world, and we seem to be getting closer and closer to trauma healing and the physical adaptation of trauma healing. And we're working on getting a study for Swami and the active meditation and the breath work. I think it takes time, but if there's enough proof moving forward and people have enough experiences, that's where part of the change is gonna take shape. I mean, if you look at Wim Hof a decade ago, they were making fun of him. Like Wim Hof a decade ago was the
Yep.
dude that was on Discovery Channel as a superhuman for the week, and so it starts off as ridicule or kind of disregarding it, and then it starts to become common knowledge. And I think it's more so me giving people experiences, and this was something that I just couldn't kind of brush underneath the rug and just kind of keep moving and helping people deadlift without pain or this or that without saying, hey, there's something else there, and I can see it. So I can stay quiet about it, but then I know that you won't have that long-term solution, or I can bring it up, and then it's up to you if you want to try and face it or not. um, and that's I think going to be the bringing it to Western science. I think that it's already starting to happen through neuroscience and Carl Friston, and there's a few other people that are trying to bring in um, trauma informed weightlifting is another association that's starting to do some of the work. Um, I will say confidently, I feel like I'm very specific as to where I see the discomfort, the amount of physical stress, and the right amount of physical stress necessary for the clients to change those behavioral cycles. Um, but yeah, I think it's just going to be a matter of time of, you know, pushing forward, giving people the experience. And, a lot of the people don't understand, like, I didn't just come from the gym aspect and tinkering with it. I'm also a whiskey fan and I like to go to bars and I'll go drink whiskey and I'll just start having a conversation with somebody out of the blue. And I love bars because it's a complete opposite of gyms. So you're not going to be meeting a lot of meatheads usually. Um, and so when I start to have these conversations, I start to recognize the pattern that they're having in their lives. And then I say, hey, so do you have discomfort here, here, and here? And I've been 99.9% accurate every single time. So for me, a lot of my patterns didn't actually come just from the gym side of things, but it was actually working with people that don't go to the gym and seeing why they're having those discomforts. And obviously there's, some physical aspects, but again,
Mm.
they're all feedback loops. If you're constantly sitting in a chair all day and your psoas is shortening and you're starting to develop a much bigger mid back weakness in the obliques, you're going to start to lose confidence. You're going to start to lose your sense of self. You're going to start to gain more stress and anxiety on your traps. You're going to start to become more over socialized. And you just want to go home and watch Netflix, right? So it sounds like the society that we're in right now for 99% that aren't in the gym, right? And so again, they're feedback
Mm.
loops. Your environment dictates or helps dictate your physiology, just like your physiology can help dictate your environment. And so there's no absolutes. I think that's the hardest part with trying to figure out an objective method of testing this, because there is no feedback loop. There is no absolute. They're feedback loops, right? And each
Mm-hmm.
system is playing its part, trying to keep the chaos of your body going towards order, whatever that order is.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the hard part into
You,
bringing it into Western science. But there is, I mean, I think that there's a lot of studies coming out that are starting to change that more holistic approach of, you know, the body holding on to tension. I mean, you see it with posture and the science coming out with, you know, the power of posture X, Y, and Z. Um, so I think that there are a lot of people talking about it. They're still regarding it to a point of position, not a point of tension.
the other thing that I think is really important to note is like posture is so revolutionary in the sense of what it reveals.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that, Richard, is if I know that you're evaluating my posture, or even just by mentioning posture, what do? Shoulders
Yeah.
back and down, flex the butt in the gut, neutralize the head a little bit, tuck the chin, elongate a little bit. Because just the mention of that word creates like a spotlight effect of like, oh, I'm being watched. He said the word, I need to address and do a self-assessment. And inevitably, I think most people are that way. Like they're trying to listen, but then they're also like observing themselves at the same time. Like, what's my posture when he says posture?
Yeah.
How's that going to look on screen? How's that going to come off as we're communicating? Like, am I getting too comfortable in this chair? Is my mid back going to get weak? Or am I sitting in my obliques? Am I going to have low back pain? Like, all this paralysis by analysis unlocks a little bit. And that's why I love when my clients come in, they have a generalized warm up that I call like the dirty 30. And what I love about is it's typically 3 minutes on a machine, 30 air squats, 30 push ups, 30 strict pull ups or ring rows, a 400-meter farmer carry, 30 burpees, and then a 3-minute plank or 3-minute wall sit. And they can break all of that up however they want. It's not meant to be like a Metcon. It's meant to be like generalized volume accumulation. Typically, the first 10 reps of things is, slow conversational pace. Second 10 is a medium pace. And the third 10, it's like, all right, let's get cooking a little bit. Like, let's get some good muscle contraction. Let's kind of narrow our focus a little bit. But what I love about it is I'm maybe with another client or I'm finishing up my trainer. Maybe I'm just kind of setting up the space for the day, but I'm observing. And through those observations, it's like you can see when people come in the gym and they're like pep in their step. They had a really good day so
Right.
far. They made some extra money, great relationships, no triggering emails. And then other days people come in and they're like, oh man, traffic sucked, couldn't find parking, just got in a fight with my boss. I had to take this extra work call. Like my shoulder's been bothering me and I have no idea why. I slept wrong last night. I feel bloated. I've been coming to the gym all the time, been checking the box. Why am I gaining belly fat? What's going on? And like there's everything in between everything that I said too. But it's just the point that I'm making there is like when somebody's being observed, behavior changes
Yeah.
versus when somebody's not being observed. And going back to my little subtle rant before of like needing and wanting a guide, a coach, a trainer, a shaman, or somebody to co-pilot your journey to maximize your human potential. When you have a set of eyes on you, I don't care who you are, you're going to enhance your behavior.
Yeah.
You're going to do the behavior that's going to be just a little bit better
Right.
than if nobody's watching. And that's why I love the concept of postures because it's so revealing.
Yeah. It's the human body doesn't lie. We'll put it that way. And it's, you could try and change the posture, right? But give it 35 seconds. Once you go back to automatic, you go right back to the same posture you had. So it's never going to lie. And the beauty
Mm-hmm.
of it is under physical stress, it's going to show you exactly how you behave in the real world. Like then there's really no hiding from it. Like that's what I love about movement done correctly and how it can enhance you so well, right? So movement applied correctly through enough physical stress will show you exactly how you quit in the real world based on how you quit in the workout or how you survive and endure the workout,
Mm.
you endure the rest of the world, right? And so, and again, you guys have to understand there's no positives or negatives. It's just, it's been reinforced into your behavior to predict and act in this way. And you need enough physical intensity to prove to yourself if you want to make a change. Does that make sense? So we cannot start to think, I'm going to change this. That's great. But when shit gets hard, you go, okay, I'll go back to how I was. Right? I mean, that's the reason that, addicts always go back to being drug addicts. And, there's all these waves, ups and downs for people gaining weight, losing weight, X, Y, and Z. You need the physical stress to truly question who you are. And what I mean by physical intensity, I always say physical intensity, it doesn't need to necessarily be volume. It just needs to be the right amount of blood flow, the right heart rate, and the breath oscillation. When those oscillate all together, that means that you can switch the brain network towards task positive. You can no longer just being there on autopilot, and you can start to make these changes. So what I do is I always try to get my clients to essentially upregulate themselves to a point where they start to push and they want to quit. And I just don't allow them to quit, right? And this isn't a Navy SEALs training where I need you to endure and survive and shut off your brain and just be there mindlessly. I want you there present. And that's what makes it hard. And so that right there starts to show the quitting mechanism. So you're always going to quit, whether it comes from boredom, anxiety. So that's a physical or mental anxiety that will make you quit. You'll get frustrated at something because you thought it was a lot easier than it was going to be, or X, Y, and Z, whatever justification you have. You'll get angry at others. And then finally, you'll get angry at yourself. And if you can push past that point, you'll understand, oh shit, it was me all along. And now we can move forward. And this allows you to create that present
Mm.
moment to gain perspective and go, okay, do I want to make change? Because that's going to require a lot of energy, not just from my brain, but from my body. Or do I want to go back to my old patterns?
No, that's really well said. I want to explore a concept with you that's coming to mind, which is people are depressive about the past, anxious about the future, very rarely in the now.
Yeah.
And when we think about the concept of trying to heal the modern human that spends their health in pursuit of wealth and then later tries to use their wealth to then regain their health, how do we fix the modern lifestyle that's so disconnected from their natural movement patterns and from emotional well-being?
Small, capable steps. I said it last time, I'll say it again. Again, most of your listeners are probably elite athletes or, training on a daily basis. The 99% you need to give capable steps. The first one is connecting to the psoas. Um, Connect to your breath through movement. So right now, like the new fad is red light therapy and breath work. And a lot of the breath work is starting to become industrialized and passive to try and get psychological responses without a true plan forward afterwards. So what I mean by that is you're seeing people that are being given a sense of hope, an ego death, an experience through the breath work. But then afterwards, they go back to their day to day life and nothing about them has changed except for this experience that had some physical intensity, but not enough. Meaning that if something of true intensity happens, of stress happens in life, they're going to revert back to the old behaviors that allow them to survive. So, in order to be present, we oscillate, right? And it's human nature to not necessarily be depressive about the past and anxious about the future. You become anxious about the future because you know that you can get there. And most of the times you're anxious about the future because you're setting a goal from the past. So somebody
Mm.
coming into the gym, I want to be able to fit in my wedding dress that I wore 20 years ago. You get anxious because you know how much work it took for you 20 years ago to get into the wedding dress. And you start to do the work, those 5 stages of quitting come into play. and you realize, holy shit, this is a lot harder. So now you get depressive about it, and now you're not making progress. So through the proper physical intensity and the oscillation of the breath, muscle contraction, and heart rate, you can allow yourself to be more present and take action on things. Right? It's the well-done control function, right? So you have these up regulations and down regulations or amplitudes of mistakes in what being present is. As humans, there's only so much time we can spend being present because in reality, we're meant to be predictive. That's how we survive. We
Mm.
gamify things. So we're trying to see how we can best argue or play this game to get where we want to be. So present is really only when maximal energy is required, right? So an orgasm or maximal excitation where you can truly just be present, right? A street fight or something along those lines, like being in the CrossFit games when you can just truly be there, zoned in. That requires a lot of energy. That's why a lot of these artists start to have panic attacks and, these sort of crazy anxiety disorders because they know how much energy the brain starts to freak out about how much energy each performance is going to take. And it builds this story in their head. So that's why you see all these athletes that are having mental breakdowns throughout the any sport. And it's not because they're softer now than they were before. It's the stakes are much higher when you look at performance that is required not to be a professional athlete in any sport because it's evolved so much that the
Mhm.
stakes are so high and they're so used to gaming everything that they have this pedestal, which is the frustration, the emotional quit. They have this pedestal of where they need to be and they themselves can't live up to that pedestal. So they have this gnarly burnout. So learning to be present requires you to take action in a small, capable step of going, hey, I'm not going to do 150 butterfly kicks to get my psoas to fire. I'm going to spend 30 seconds just breathing, trying to raise my leg where my breath dictates to raise my leg with my psoas. If you can do that for 35 to 45 seconds, your whole body will start to tremble. That trembling is neural output, it's neural connections happening. It's you starting to become more present, right? Start with 30, 45 seconds and then build up. Don't let the ego go, I can get my leg all the way up into an L sit. Listen to the body, listen to where it can and it cannot hold tension because that's how it's going to hold on to
Mhm.
stress.
I also really like the concept of using time, right? Like you mentioned high performers. Let's use Avicii, who you mentioned earlier. We can talk about Robin Williams. We can talk about the famous drummer for the Foo Fighters, Taylor Hawkins. Guys that have all eventually lost their lives, whether that was commitment of suicide or something of that sort, just because the stakes became so overwhelming. The pressure of feeling like they need to be up
Mm-hmm.
and just the perception of, man, I got to go on tour. I got to be away from my family. I have all these fans that paid a lot of money for this performance. I know what it's going to take for me to get there. And whether it's drugs, whether it's lack of sleep, whether it's different time zones, whether it's feeling like you're only loved for your function or your capacity rather than who you are as a human, constant pictures, people wanting and needing things all the fucking time. You then become reliant on external things like, drugs, alcohol, caffeine, breath work. Those things work until they don't work anymore. You
Right.
need like a faster response just because breath work and some of these DMT things just take time that you don't always have, especially when you're traveling. You don't want to put the time, energy, or attention into them. And then as a byproduct, you get into this loop. Like the world is treating high performers now like robots. NFL players are playing more games. Their bodies are getting beat up. They're needing to rely on Toradol, peptides, different forms of human growth hormone to heal and recover. Basketball players are playing year round.
Yeah.
Just the expectations from the consumer and this level of entertainment are so high for some of these people that, I mean, you can hear it in my voice. I feel it sometimes too. Like, man, I got to do a podcast every week. I'm coaching 40 hours a week, trying to create merch, trying to do lifestyle design, trying to connect with people. It's just a never ending laundry list. And the world is telling us, especially with AI, like you need to be everywhere all the time,
Yeah.
provide as much value as possible and squeeze as much juice out of the orange. It sounds cool, But it's also that's us just do until burnout happens and life forces us to stop, as opposed to just finding time to carve out to be.
Right.
And that's something I'm really curious about, how you navigate some of your coaching, just this unique connection. We talked about oscillating. We talked about using movement. We talked about using breath work. But when you think about the mind, body, and the emotion, how do we just fucking stop, Richard? How do we get out of the rat race? How do we just be? How do we connect with the sun? Listen to maybe some music and just do nothing sometimes, because a field of rest brings a bountiful crop.
Yeah. This is where I always, we talk about pain, discomfort, burnout, anxiety, all of it. Um, Again, three factors that I put into it is physiological, psychological, and environmental. And so with some of my clients, I'm like, hey, you need a vacation. You know what I mean? Turn off your phone and get on a vacation. I have one of my clients actually next week. She's going
Mhm.
to, I was like, you need a vacation. I'm like, I have a house in Italy. It's not being used. Go to my house in Italy. And she's like, "Are you serious?" I was like, "Yeah, dude, go use it." And she's going next week. And it's sometimes you just need to change the environment to gain perspective. Like that's a big thing. If you can change the environment for a little bit, it allows you to have a little bit of perspective. Now, obviously, if you're changing the environment, but your head is still stuck psychologically in the old environment, it's going to be very difficult. So, you know, this is where, for me, again, small, capable steps. Can you give yourself 5 minutes in the morning to do the calf raises? I mean, I keep pounding this. And I know it sounds so simple, but because it sounds so simple, 95% of people won't do it, or they'll do it for 3 days and be like, no, I'm okay. But if you can really, like every morning, no matter how stressful, how miserable I feel, how tired, even today, I was like stressing because I've had this gnarly stomach flu for 5 days where I could barely get out of bed. Um,
Mm.
you know,
Sorry, man.
life. Don't eat raw chicken. No, I'm kidding. I didn't eat raw chicken. I don't know what happened. Anywho, but like we every morning I get up and I just look at the sun and I do calf raises and I open up the window and I get no matter if it's cold, raining, I open up the doors and I stand there and I do my calf raises and I just embrace those 30 seconds, 45 seconds. I go make my coffee, I come back, I do another 45 seconds. I go pour my coffee, I have my first sip of coffee with my toes up and feeling my calves, my hamstrings, and I just enjoy it. My son comes over, joins me sometimes. Like it's a peaceful moment where I'm just like, nothing matters, this matters. And then after the third set, I'm like, okay, so what do we need to get done today? And then I start going, right? But just that small step takes 5 minutes while you're making your coffee could make a huge difference. You just need to find time for you to just what is it that you enjoy and go do that, right? And so it doesn't
Mhm.
need for me. I love the calf races because anybody can do calf races while they're making coffee, while they're cooking breakfast. If even if you're in a run and you can still be doing some calf races and just get the blood flow from the calves to the hamstrings. It takes less than 2 minutes.
Mhm.
And so, you know, small capable steps to be present are scary. That would be the second one, right? Is it's scary to be present because then you have to deal with yourself. There's no more justifications, and you have to answer real questions,
Oh yeah.
you know? And so, like, I was with that, you know, a few weeks ago. So, we've been going back and forth over a year about do we go back to California? Do we stay here in Amsterdam? Like pros, cons, going back and forth. And 2 weeks ago, it's just like sitting there, and I was like, we're going to California because I know that's where the business is going to grow. We're going to be close to family. Winter's coming here in Amsterdam. I feel like having sunshine. I'm tired of cold winters. I'm going back to California. But it was a very real answer. But it took a lot of
Mhm.
time of me justifying all these answers, again, going through those 5 stages to get to the point where I just sat there and I was just like, what is the solution, Richard? Like, what is the solution? And it came clear. We know the answers. We just have justifications for all of them.
Oh yeah. When you keep mentioning the 5 stages, what are these 5 stages and how can we like really make them clear for people to put in their back pocket when they walk away from our conversation today?
Yeah, so the 5 stages is the selfish brain theory. Essentially, it goes down to five stages. So the greater the stress, the greater the lesson learned. You have to go through these five stages in order to learn any lesson. The stages starts with boredom. So I'm bored. I want to lose weight. I'm tired of being a fat slob. I need to get to the gym. Then you go towards anxiety. Anxiety either is mental or physical. So now you start to go, okay, well, in order for me to get out of this couch and go to the gym, I need to find a personal trainer that knows what they're doing. I start to look, I find you, I get excited. Okay, let's go on to the next stage. We're going to go work out, and Bryce is going to get me to lose weight. I mean, I saw his results of all his other members. It's going to be easy peasy. You start driving to the gym, the stomach starts to get a little tingly, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's physical and symptom of anxiety at the 4 pack, right? So physical or mental anxiety will make you quit. Then you'll have frustration because you get to the gym. I'm training with Bryce, but I thought it was going to be a lot easier because when he said on his videos on Instagram that it only took 5 minutes of ab works a day, not that you say that, right? But now I'm seeing that I need hours and hours of time. So I get frustrated and I quit. Then you start to get angry at others. I start to blame you because I'm not losing the weight. It's not my fault. It's your fault. You told me that you were going to guarantee my results. Then you go back to the beginning. And then eventually you realize it's yourself not being committed to wanting to change. So no matter what you do in life, you will go through these stages and you will find quitting mechanisms. And the quitting mechanisms, again, they're not
Mm.
negative. You can't mind your way out of it. It's just the way that you've been reinforced to learn how to handle stress when it becomes overwhelming. So it was Steve Cotter. We've talked about this before. You can only challenge a human being 4% of their current skill set. Anything above that leads towards boredom or anxiety. Anything above that leads them to quit somewhere along those five stages. And
Mm.
so for you,
That's a good tip.
yeah, for you to learn that lesson, right? It's an understanding that you need to be present physically, mentally, emotionally to learn these things. If you're doing it passively, then you've already quit on the mental anxiety side. You can't just be checking the
Mm-hmm.
box. That's why people will
Yeah.
go through the nutrition, will go through the exercises, and their body aesthetics don't change, their weights don't change, they plateau, they still have the recurring injuries, right? It's because they're going through it, checking the boxes. The exercises can work, but it's how you do the exercises that will gear the results.
Mm-hmm.
So we need physical stress in order
I
for
love.
us to see where you're going to quit.
Yeah, for sure. Movement ayahuasca, Richard.
Yeah.
You're now involved in some pretty cool retreats that you're putting on. You're getting ready to head to Bali here soon.
Yeah.
What's happened over the last year or so now that you've been tinkering with these retreats? What kinds of case studies have you seen? And let's paint a picture for people as to what movement ayahuasca is and what benefits they can receive from attending.
Yeah. So, first disclaimer, there will be no ayahuasca or DMT in this retreat. It is all movement and breath. Essentially, the golden nuggets that I've kind of laid out through the podcast here. I work with the humans that come to the retreat to get them to connect to their truest selves. And we find the sabotage in their behavioral patterns. And, I navigate them to answer the question, do you want to change or do you want to stay the same? Um, from case studies that I've had a guy that came. He's a really good friend of mine, but he went through a whole month intensive therapy, psychiatric treatment, and was going through all this stuff. Through 2 days of the physical intensity, he actually slept for the first time in years, had a full night's sleep, no nightmares, no night
I love
terrors.
that.
I've had other clients that we lived blocked out traumas and were able to change the perspective of these traumas and these guilts that they carried on. Essentially, the goal is to create a transformation of how you view the world and how you want to act in this world. So it seems a bit vague, but at the end of the retreat, the reason it sounds vague is I work with each individual. So it's not, I don't want to say that there's like a niche of just PTSD or depression or anxiety. Is I work with a human coming in through 4 days. I go through listening to what you have to say and the narrative brain wants to justify. And then I also go through how the body is actually speaking. And the difference is when I give you the micro DMT experience, which is essentially what I've figured out how to do, is I have a system through Swami where I can actually give you a micro DMT experience, but it's all with it. It's all DMT that's in the naturally in the body. Um, I allow you to find the root cause of what the body needs to express before it can move on to other things. So I've had clients that come in having big traumas, sexual abuse, you name it. Um, and as we go through it, the body wasn't ready. It isn't ready to deal with letting go of the safety mechanisms that it has to how it feels about certain men approaching or certain scents. But it needs to understand how to let go of her not getting a hug at 4 years old from the father and him walking away. So I listen to the body because the body has a clear record of what it needs to resolve to gain safety and confidence to then be able to perform better under stress or positively adapt to stress afterwards. Where, normal ayahuasca or DMT experiences open the floodgates to everything, but no action is taken.
Hmm.
Here, you're being forced to take the action if you want the change. And so that's the beauty of it. All the clients
Yeah.
that come out of it are like, holy cow, okay. So now there's a drive to go forward, and there's also a blueprint with morning routines and workouts that they need to do once they leave the retreat.
No, what's really cool about this, Richard, is it's almost like giving somebody the tools to see their movement patterns and realize, oh, you're struggling here because of X, Y, and Z mobility. And so when you put them through a series of tension, you program their neural patterning and their motor learning. Now the knowledge that they gained actually sticks because they got practice through action.
Right.
And I think, from my understanding, I've never done ayahuasca, but I think it unlocks channels in chemistry. And I've heard people talk about it too with psychedelic experiences. And is it called Gambo? The one with the frog that
Cambo.
goes into the arm?
Cambo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Cambo. And yeah. And I've heard people describe those things, how it like unlocks channels. You start to think differently. And then it gradually shifts action over the course of time. But I like that you're taking action at your retreats, connecting with people, integrating them within like small little case studies and allowing them to have little cohorts within the broad and inclusive group that you have. So then you can get one-on-one time. They can then discuss their individual experiences with other people that are attending. And then you guys get to come together. And then you also have just community events that are kind of like food or drinks or fun activities that bring bonding together and allow you guys to realize, hey, we just did this hard thing together. Now we're going to come together and formulate a friendship and a deeper, more meaningful connection that's going to bleed way out of just this retreat, but into, a lifestyle and a connection where we can kind of text each other and have group texts and send memes and do all the things on social media. Is that kind of painting the picture right for people?
Yeah, it's for me it's I think the experience is my ultimate joy in being present in life. I don't know how to say that correctly, but yeah, it's. I want to give a badass experience. So the houses that we get are always just fucking epic, and I love cooking, so we always do like big steak dinners, and I have nice wine, and it's about being present, like you said, like. That's part of the change, like being social, and it's not just about okay, eat your macros or starve yourselves, and let's go through something hard. It's no, let's go through something hard and then let's, sit around the table and talk about our battles and where did we struggle and what did we feel, and then I start to go into, so you start to feel the elbow hurting because you weren't connecting to the bicep. Why didn't you want to get angry? And then, we start to have these cool conversations, but it's bringing a group of people that want to understand themselves better and showing them that being present is a big part of it. And so the social aspect and just the acceptance creates this group that is willing to be super vulnerable and willing to express and get angry. And it was amazing. We were in Australia, and I had two rugby players. I had a French dude. I had a Muslim woman. I had a very Christian woman. I had a rock star. I had a gay guy. You know what I mean? Like, and a mom with a baby. And we all got together, and it was just like everybody got along so well. Like it just goes to show that if you could just breathe, move, and have good food together, this whole world could just get along. Like it's not that difficult.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? It was wonderful. But yeah, the goal is create a new environment so that you can be present, and let's change what you want to change. You know what you came here to change, so let's make it happen. I'm just here to open up the doors.
I like that because the thing limiting most of us is the story we tell ourselves. And so navigating that story with a new environment, new smell, new energy, new frequency, and new tribe around you allows you to explore a little bit. What are a few practical tips that people can use for everyday healing? If we were to just give people a couple nuggets, and as they're trying to heal, I mean, everybody on earth is suffering in some capacity. They might posture it, they might handle it better than others. But most people on this planet, as we talked about last time from Henry David Thoreau, are living lives of quiet desperation. They're just trying to make it to their pillow at night. They're trying to pay their bills. They're trying to figure out their rent or their mortgage payment, especially in the volatile environment that we're seeing in the world right now. Upcoming election, a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, a lot of things going on. How can people better manage their healing journey, and what tips would you suggest?
Don't be afraid to express in the gym. Meaning breathing while movement is very powerful. And if you're feeling high stress, don't be afraid to do that workout that I gave earlier with the grunt. Like, just learn to, even if it's pushing a sled as hard as you can, like, don't be afraid to let go in the gym because that's a very safe space to let go. Learn to listen to your body. So, funny story, my parents were here visiting and they were here for like 3 weeks while my wife was doing the Camino de Santiago. And my wife came back and she's like, "Hey, how was it? How was it with your parents?" I was like, "Oh, it was great." She's like, "It didn't seem like it was, too crowded in the house with your parents here and you having to sleep on the couch and all this." I was like, "No, absolutely not." And then I started to laugh because while my parents were here, my left neck was just like in agony. Like it just felt heavy all the time. And this is the sign that you're over socializing, that you need time for yourself. You need some safe space to just kind of relax and just unwind. And, not listening to my own body because I wanted to justify it because we all do. And I'm going to the gym and I was starting to get stressed out because I'm like, I'm the dude that's always bench pressing and talking about bench press doesn't hurt the shoulders, but now my fucking shoulder is hurting. And my parents left and the shoulder pain went away within like 5 minutes. And I was like, holy cow. And so learn to listen to your body, right? So again, these are the way that the body is observing and telling you how it feels in the environment. So if you're feeling your left neck or your left trap or it feels heavy, go find space for 2 to 3 hours where you can just have a safe space that you can go to and unwind and not have to prove anything to anybody. If you're feeling the right side, it's just stress towards work. So go find somewhere where you can go express how you feel and start to become proud of what you're doing. So start to connect to the left, to the right pec a little bit more. If you start to feel pain in the low back, you need to express anger towards past events. So if you feel it more on the left, it's because you're the rock and you take on everybody's stress. So it always holds on the left glute med. If you feel it on the right, it's because people frustrate you and make you angry and you don't want to express it. So learn to express it.
Mm.
And again, the safest ways to do this is going to the gym and start to grunt and move. And if it doesn't happen physiologically, go take a vacation and change the environment, which I know is not doable for everybody, but just take a weekend trip, go buy a tent and go somewhere and just be by yourself for a weekend. And I guarantee that your ailments and most of the pain, discomfort, the stress, everything will kind of subside and you can actually get some clear thoughts going.
Hmm. Yeah, and it doesn't have to be like a huge vacation. It just needs to be
Yeah.
something disruptive. Get a
Right.
change of environment, maybe take the day off, get into some cold water, go lay at the beach. Like do something that's outside of the ordinary to reset, recharge, and recalibrate. It's very well said, man. What's next for Richard Aceves other than me trying to get you back to California?
Yeah, so I will be back in California more than likely in early January. I leave October 28th, but we'll be in Mexico. So we'll be in Orange County. I have so many things going on. So I have Bali coming up in November. I have Movement Ayahuasca in Portugal in April, and I've created a Moved Academy certification. So trying to elevate the fitness world. I created a certification that is currently in the works and getting accredited, but the first cohort
Nice.
starts October 15th, and then the next one will be in February. So trying to get people to understand how to assess tension over position and start to have that deep dive of the practical application of the nervous system and the physical, mental, emotional aspects of training, whether it's one-on-one or group classes. So just a few
For
things.
sure. No, I love it, man, and I'm really excited for all those things, especially that certification that's going to help
Yeah.
educate, motivate, and inspire so many people just to think a little bit differently in the fitness space for sure. Richard, if you could have a billboard and maybe share some of your healing knowledge or your words as people were driving past that billboard every single day, what would your billboard say?
Fucking enjoy life. This is a small bleep in time. Simple.
Love that, man. That's so good. Richard, you're the man, the myth, the legend. I'm pumped to have you here early next year. I appreciate you always giving us a peek behind the curtain on grief today, a little bit of the ayahuasca retreats, and obviously understanding position and tension and emotions within muscles. You're somebody that looks at the world with a very special set of lenses, and I always appreciate crossing paths with you, man.
Thank you, brother. Thank you for having me. We'll be seeing each other soon.
For sure. Guys, if you enjoyed my conversation with Richard Aceves, please rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends. And as always, stay on the hunt for who you've not yet become. Until next time, bye bye.